Are you hunting for the last bit of Tellurium to finish your frame or weapon, or maybe you just want to stack up so you don't have to worry about it in the future? I'm Tipsy and today we'll be covering everything you need to know about farming Tellurium. First we'll look at most of the different ways to get Tellurium, then we'll go over a beginner-friendly farming method, and lastly we will dive into the most efficient ways of farming it, with extra tips and tricks to boost your Tellurium farming efficiency. And here's the agenda for the video, so feel free to use the timestamps to find the specific sections you're looking for. Tellurium is a rare resource in Warframe, typically found in Archwing or Railjack missions with a 0.2% drop rate from enemies in these nodes. Submersible missions are also considered Archwing missions and may also drop Tellurium, so keep that in mind. Additional, some regular missions offer Tellurium as a rotation reward, and it may also appear in the daily tribute, which is your daily login rewards. Although Tellurium is a rare resource, there's various ways to farm Tellurium, but definitely depends on your luck. Early game Tellurium farming should only be done if you haven't reached Uranus as a planet, as better methods becomes available once you're there. For early game Tellurium farming, which starts as soon as you unlock your Archwing, giving you access to Archwing missions where enemies has a 0.2% chance to drop Tellurium. The earliest accessible missions include Erpa on Earth, Montes on Venus, Certis on Mars, Kepler on Phobos, and Galilea on Jupiter, each providing a small chance for Tellurium to drop with each enemy defeated. I personally recommend running the Montes mission on Venus, as it's a quick close quarters missions at the lowest level. Also it's easy to complete. Additionally, you can farm some decent mods for your Archwing setup here, making it probably the most efficient and only viable choice for early game farming. So what you want to do is basically head into the Montes mission and keep running this mission, as each enemy you defeat has a 0.2% chance to actually drop Tellurium. On top of that, there's also certain missions that has Tellurium in their rotation rewards, as seen here on the screen. To have a chance at getting Tellurium from these missions, you'll need to reach Rotation C rewards, which requires opening 3 hidden caches found in the missions. However, for the sole purpose of farming Tellurium, this method might not be worth it, so stick to the Archwing missions instead. But if you're farming for the Cyphos ship and doing cache missions frequently, Tellurium could potentially drop from this, although the drop chance is pretty low. And the best and most accessible farming method for Tellurium is of course gonna be Ophelia on Uranus. This is a submersible survival mission where you can use frames as normal, so you don't have to be in your Archwing all the time, and each enemy in these missions also have a 0.2% chance to drop Tellurium. And if you also want to level your Necromech while farming, you could do any survival mission in the Railjack section, as these works in the same manner as Ophelia. This makes Ophelia the first mission, but not the only one where you can efficiently farm Tellurium. So all you have to do is enter the Ophelia mission and start defeating enemies, and you could try and find a spot where you could camp, ensuring enemies don't sneak up behind you and allowing you to funnel the enemies towards you. And in the next section we'll be going over how you can increase your odds and the amount of Tellurium you farm using this method. So what can we do to increase our chances of getting Tellurium and make the grind more efficient? To improve a Tellurium farming, there's a few strategies we can use. For starters, getting a drop chance blessing from a MR30 player in any relay can significantly boost your likelihood of Tellurium to drop. Additionally, using a loot frame with abilities that enhances loot chances can be extremely efficient, and here are some recommended frames and abilities to use. Nekros with the Desecrate ability, Khora with the Pilfering Strangle Dome mod, Hydroid with the Pilfering Swarm mod, and Atlas with the Orgaze mod. These warframes are recommended if you have access to them and the necessary mods to make them work as a loot frame. Keep in mind that Nekros don't require a mod for his loot ability to actually work. With the increased drop chances, you can also enhance the amount of the drops with a resource booster that doubles all the drops. These boosters can be purchased from the marketplace or obtained through the daily tribute system. On top of that, if you have a beast companion, I highly recommend using a resourceful retriever or loyal retriever mod, which gives you a chance to double the Tellurium you obtain. If you're curious about how to farm the retriever mods, I have a video linked in the description that covers everything you need to know about the retriever mods. If you don't have access to a beast companion with the retriever mods, you could use a sentinel companion with the spare parts mod, which sometimes marks an enemy, making them more likely to drop loot. It is not as OP as the old spare parts mod, but it's better than nothing. Also, one important thing to consider when farming any resource dropped by enemies is the enemy spawn rates. In normal mode, the spawn rates is influenced by the number of players in the lobby, while in Steel Path mode, enemies spawns are always maxed out even if you're playing on solo. So in solo missions on normal mode, the enemy spawn rates will only reach 1/4 of the maximum spawn rate, and as you add more squad mates, the number increases to match the players in the squad. So to max out the spawn rates in a normal mission, you will need a full squad to do so. On the other hand, in Steel Path mode, the enemy spawn rates or enemy density is always set to max, even in solo play. Which is great, especially since Steel Path has an innate bonus to drop chance on top of that. So if you have friends or someone to join in on the grind, this could greatly increase your KPM while farming. Alternatively, if you can do Steel Path, which is the better option to grind, as it offers more enemies and increased drop chance. If I missed anything that could help increase your chances, feel free to leave a comment below to help others with the Tellurium grind, and like the video to help me. After running monsters 20 times on normal in solo mode, it took an average of around 2 minutes to complete each mission. In total, I obtained 3 Tellurium from these runs, all of which were acquired within the first 10 runs, while none dropping during the last 10 runs. And here you can see the results of the 20 runs I did. But with that said, this is an early game method, meaning it's the earliest point in the game where you can actually farm for Tellurium. However, it's not particularly efficient since Tellurium isn't really meant to be farmed at this stage in the game. If you only need a small amount of Tellurium early on, you could farm it here, otherwise I highly recommend progressing to Uranus and farming in the Ophelia mission, which is far more efficient way of gathering Tellurium overall. So how much Tellurium will you need in total in Warframe? Well, it's gonna depend. If you're a completely solo player and want to get everything while also grinding for the clan's research, you will need a total of 326 Tellurium. However, since most people aren't going to be researching a solo clan completely, we can subtract 42 Tellurium from this. Which means you will need a total of 284 Tellurium for all cosmetics, components, weapons and frames in the game. If you're only crafting weapons and frames, you will need around 109 Tellurium to craft all of the weapons and frames though. Technically, you could farm 109 Tellurium now if you only craft weapons and frames, and you will be set for the current update of Warframe. And of course, Tellurium can be annoying to farm at first when you need it. However, as you slowly progress through the game and gather more Tellurium, it won't be long before it's just another resource in your inventory. And just for anyone curious about the builds I use throughout the video, keep in mind that some of these builds might require a bit of farming to match exactly. These builds are more what I enjoy playing with, so if you like what you see, you could work towards it or maybe just use the build I'm using. However, you could probably find a more min-max build out there. That said, you don't necessarily need a build like this to actually make this farm work. So together with my own builds I used, I will also show a more beginner-friendly build that could be easier to obtain than the one I'm using. So first, for the Archwing for the early game farm, of course you will need an Archwing, but you don't necessarily need any mods on it. I do recommend maybe getting some health or shield mods just to increase your overall survivability. I personally used the Elytron, which has a higher base for health and shields, and here are my mods I had on it. But I didn't really use any abilities, so it don't really matter much about which Archwing you use, just as long as you don't get killed throughout the mission, it should be sufficient. And for the weapon I used the Mausolon, which you acquire upon getting your Necromag. Using the Imperator is also completely fine as well, since that comes for free with your Ardanta Archwing, so you don't necessarily need any other weapon than the one that comes with your Archwing. We will be going over a more beginner-friendly build for the Imperator as well after the Mausolon build. So for my Mausolon build, I use these mods as you can see here. Some do require a bit of farming, such as dual rounds, as that has a low drop chance. And for the Prime mod, you just have to be lucky that Barrow actually brings it in his bi-weekly shop rotation. However, this weapon is completely overpowered compared to the Montes mission, which is basically one of the earliest Archwing missions in the game, so you don't necessarily need this. The Imperator will do fine, and you can basically still one-shot things with the Imperator with ease. So for the Imperator, just having automatic trigger and polar magazine leveled up should be more than enough to clear Montes mission quickly. The polar magazine can be farmed in Urpo on Earth, while the automatic trigger can drop from the Montes mission you will be running anyway. So getting this build should be fairly easy and not too big of a grind. And that should cover everything on the Archwing section. Now onto the frames, where we'll be covering the Nekros and the Khora. So the build I used on my Nekros is more focused on the Steel Path and survivability, using the Shield of Shadows while avoiding Deep Spoil, which I personally enjoy more. This build does fine for me solo on Steel Path, and also the Ophelia mission if you just keep your Shield of Shadows up. And Terrify will fully armor strip enemies, making them easy to kill, so this build is more than sufficient enough to just solo Steel Path and should be good enough. And as this build is pretty overkill for just running normal mission as Nekros, if you don't have the mods for this build, you could work towards something like this. It should be easier to acquire these mods as you see here, and just focus on actually getting health, shield and good range on it. That should be more than enough for normal missions most likely. Also remember, killing enemies quickly is also a kind of survivability. Anyways, now for Khora, she plays a little bit differently and will need a stat stick to work efficiently, at least on Steel Path. On top of that, you will need 2 specific mods to make her Strangle Dome really function as a loot dome and also kill the enemies. At least on Steel Path, Pilfering Strangle Dome is a must-have, since it gives you the bonus chance for loot. And as you can see here, this is my build for Steel Path Khora. It's an old build, but it works for me. However, it might have some energy problems in the beginning until you get a kill chamber up and running. For the stat stick on the other hand, or the melee weapon, I'm using an Incarn ceramic dagger with gun and blade, adaptive reflexes and absolute valor. And for the mods, as you can see here, I'm using combo multiplier mods such as the Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds, which give me more damage the more combo I have, simple as that. So I will just build up combo while actually using my 1 on Khora, and that will basically give me more and more damage the more my combo builds up. However, for normal missions, the stat stick is not nearly as important as it is on Steel Path, where here basically any weapon will do, or should work fine at least, but if you could build for combo, it should do wonders on certain weapons. You don't necessarily need to have an Incarn ceramic dagger for it to work, basically any weapon should do it on normal mode. And that's it. Hopefully this covers everything you wanted to know about Tellurium, but if I missed anything, feel free to let me know. If you have any questions or want more Warframe tips, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my other Warframe videos. We also have a Discord server where you can join a Warframe clan, so feel free to hop in there too. Stay tuned, stay tipsy, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.